Starting us off at number 10 is the Rundle family, Valentine's Day 1985. 37-year-old Cassandra Rundle and her two kids Detrick and Melanie are the main characters of this gruesome story. That morning, Cassandra's second ex-husband showed up to her house to give her a record album as a gift, but when he entered the house, he found the entire family brutally murdered. Cassandra herself was found naked and tied up in bed. It was clear she had been raped, beaten, and then strangled to death. Melanie was found in the exact same condition in her own room, and Detrick was beaten to death in his own room where the murder weapon was found as well. It was a hockey stick. Despite a triple homicide being a massive deal, the culprit was never caught, and so the case simply went cold. Coming in at number 9 is China Rose Sims, Valentine's Day 1993. In February of 1988, David Sims got married to China Rose, a Filipino native who was 20 years his junior, whilst on a business trip to the country. The couple travelled back to England, moved in together, but the marriage quickly started falling apart, and China told her sister she desperately wanted to leave David since he had started violently abusing her. David had apparently even told her he'd kill her since it was cheaper than divorcing her. Fast forward to V-Day 1993, China went to a family event, and that was the last time she was ever seen alive. Despite telling her family she wanted to go home to the Philippines, she never contacted any of them again, and even more weird was the fact that David also dropped off the map too at the same time. David even had two daughters from a previous marriage that he cut off contact with as well, so till this day we have no idea where China or David are, if David killed her, if she's even alive, absolutely nothing. At number 8 we have the date, Valentine's Day 2000. This one's from an anonymous redditor who shared that she decided to go on a blind date on Valentine's Day that year, as she had been alone for a few years, so she was like, you know what, why not? What's a better time than now? They decided to go for a dinner date, and honestly it was going well. The boy was attractive, he was funny, but for some reason he looked anxious or nervous, like he had to be somewhere else. The user brushed it off and proceeded to go over to his house for some wine, but things went horribly wrong. The duo started making out on the couch, and 30 seconds later the guy had managed to somehow handcuff her to the window bar above them, non-consensually. He then told her he would only set her free if she performed certain sexual acts, and terrified, she agreed. He eventually let her go and she called the police on him, but when they went to the address she provided, the place was unfurnished, like no one had been living there for a long time. Filling at number 7 slot is Billy TRIMBACH, Valentine's Day 1992. That day was the day Cindy and Billy TRIMBACH got married, and on their first anniversary Billy was found shot to death 50 miles away from his home in Stoneham, Colorado. A police officer had actually driven by where his body was found earlier and saw multiple cars, but didn't really think anything of it. Well, that should have told you that it was something shady, but okay, clearly not qualified. Evidence started pointing to Cindy, who had collected $500,000 in life insurance on his life, and things found in her car suggested his body had been inside of it. Cindy then moved to Montana with her 10-year-old son James, who she'd had from a previous marriage. But when a newspaper article came out about Billy's murder, James started getting teased about it by a fellow classmate. So the 10-year-old pulled out a gun and shot his classmate to death. He then went on to juvie, and Cindy died in 1996, and no one ever found out what happened to Billy. Now at number 6 is the reunion, Valentine's Day 2017. Now this one was shared by redditor Queef of Police, which is hilarious by the way, who shared that he was deployed with US forces during Valentine's Day, so he unfortunately couldn't spend it with his wife. Either way, he sent her a sweet letter telling her he couldn't wait to see her, and when he finally came back he found out that his wife was very much pregnant. The estimated conception date was Valentine's Day, and needless to say the baby definitely wasn't his, and they definitely didn't stay married. That's shocking, these ain't loyal man, they never loyal. Coming in at number 5 is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Valentine's Day 1929. During this period, Al Capone's Southside gang was struggling to control organised crime in the city because they were up against an Irish Northsiders whose head was George Bugs Moran. That morning, 7 men from the Northsiders were gathered at Lincoln Park when they were lined up against a wall and shot by 4 unknown men that posed as police officers. It was assumed Al Capone was behind the whole thing because he wanted to get rid of Bugs, but he actually ended up being the last survivor of the Northside gang. So I mean, that would have been a really crap day to take a Valentine's Day stroll through Lincoln Park with your loved one. Just imagine seeing all those shootings. And I just realized Lincoln Park isn't also the band Lincoln Park. Yeah. At number 4 is Marcy Jo Andrews, Valentine's Day 1984. Marcy and her friends decide to go to a Valentine's Day party at a person called Casey Nowicki's apartment. Casey was driving Marcy and her two friends home when he crashed into a viaduct and Marcy's ankle got injured. In a moment of quick thinking, he told the girls to take his car keys and call a tow truck while he took Marcy to the hospital in a taxi. That night, the girls called Marcy, who was at Casey's apartment, sounding scared and saying he had never taken her to the hospital. That was the last time anyone heard from her ever again. Despite making many attempts to go to Casey's apartment, he kept telling the girls that Marcy had left ages ago and they had no idea where she was. In 2000, he was charged with murdering her as he had apparently drugged her with THC for days on end while he sexually abused her. A witness even claimed he had seen Marcy in his apartment days after the accident, naked and handcuffed to his radiator, apparently dead. Filling at number 3 slot is Maureen Fields, Valentine's Day 2006. 41-year-old Maureen Fields was in quite a bad place in her marriage with Paul Fields. When she went into work that day at the Wells Fargo Bank in Nevada, she told her co-workers that something was going to happen to her, and the next day she goes missing. Maureen's car ends up being found the next day stuck in the sand in a secluded section of the Mojave Desert. The only things left in the car were her purse, pantyhose, a blanket with vomit and blood on it, and an empty bottle of Xanax. And we've done enough cases to speculate the empty bottle meant suicide, but her body was never found. Male DNA was also found on her pantyhose, and in a plot twist, they did not match Paul. Instead, they matched convicted sex offender Keith Wayne Holmes, who said he had had consensual sex with Maureen before leaving her alone in the desert, an unlikely story. He also had dementia, so he couldn't really recall anything else, and we can't really verify his facts. Either way, her body was never found, so we don't really know what happened to her. Now at number 2 is Julie Valentine, Valentine's Day 1990. Glenn Hayward was looking for some wildflowers to give his wife that day when he decided to look in a field. That specific field was known as an illegal dumping ground, and so there was a bunch of random scattered everywhere, because apparently this was just a casual thing. Everyone was just dropping their illegal drugs and whatnot. Either way, Glenn ended up finding a Sears vacuum cleaner box which smelled like actual ass. You'd know. When he opened it, he found the decomposing body of a newborn baby girl. She was covered with some newspaper and a blanket, her umbilical cord was still attached, and the placenta was there as well. Autopsy reports confirmed she was most likely born 5 days before discovery and had died 2 days after being born. There was food in her stomach indicating that she had been looked after at one point or another, but then abandoned. They didn't know what to call her, but since she was found on Valentine's Day, they just dubbed her Julie Valentine. That's so sad. That is quite sad. And finally, at number 1 is Antonio Saldivar, Valentine's Day 2014. Houston-based 17-year-old Antonio borrowed his mom's car so he could go visit his girlfriend for the day. He had bought one of those huge teddy bears and wanted to go give it to her, but after missing his curfew, his mom started calling him. She finally got an answer from him at 4 AM when he called back saying, "Yeah, I know I'm grounded, but I'll be there. I'm coming, I'm on my way." And that was the last time anyone ever heard from Antonio again. Less than 30 minutes later, Antonio totaled the car by crashing into a concrete pillar, but his body wasn't found at the scene. Inside the car, authorities just found his shoes. He remained missing for another 2 weeks before his body was found underwater in the Houston Ship Channel. They assumed after the car accident he may have wandered around a bit disoriented and then drowned, but a lot of just doesn't add up. He never ended up going to his girlfriend's house, the teddy bear was found inside his pants, and the area he drowned in was inaccessible, so how did he even get there himself? Make it make sense.
Alright, Ain't Love Swell at number 10. Nothing quite says romance like an infectious disease, or whatever's going on here. Has he had a bad fall? Has he got the pox? Is it just the card that has aged, making him look like he has a rash? The card reads, "Ain't love a swell condition, I caught it from you." I guess it really puts the sickness in sickness and in health. Personally, I would stay away from any suggestion that you may have given or received something contagious. In the age of the prominent STI, it just isn't sexy. Love is pretty delicious at number 9. So my nana would always say semi-creepy things to babies like, "Ooh, they're so cute, look at their little toes, I could eat them up," and I'd be like, "Nana, chill." I'm gonna assuming maybe it's just an age thing. It reads, "You're sweet enough to eat, be my Valentine." Okay, a bit creepy, but kind of cute in a nana squeezing a baby's toe kind of way. Sure, but then we see the picture and it is all kinds of ho no. Like, I mean, she's being cooked alive in a cauldron, isn't she? There's no two ways about that. She's probably scolding her hands right now as she tries to climb out of the side of it. Nothing says I love you like horrible murder followed by cannibalism. Am I right? No, Jeremy, you're wrong. This isn't flattering. This is a bright red flashing warning sign. Love can turn you into a bit of a monster. I agree, but this really isn't sending the right message, is it? Up next we have Dracula meets Jekyll and Hyde. This is a great card for Halloween, don't get me wrong, but not a suitable Valentine's token unless you have met a freak like you and you both mutually consent to this madness, in which case, actually, in some dark ways, I'm pretty happy for you. Alright, so I mean there's a lot going on here to digest, isn't there? A child vampire mixing up a love potion with her tongue, letting out like a kind of thing going on and bats encircling her head. The card reads, "What is the secret formula? You drive me batty." Like, I'm not sure this makes 100% conceptual sense, but nonetheless, Valentine's cards probably aren't the time for off-color doping references. Romance with a side of rohypnol. Hard no. Up next, jealousy is an ugly beast. We have the hammer. There really is a lot going on with this cutesy card. I hate to say it, but I think it's depicting a pre-murder scene. A boy and a girl, they kind of look like children. They're sitting under an umbrella sharing a cute moment. There's even a puppy involved. But in the background we see a jealous garden gnome has got loose and he might actually about to smash up their bodies to smithereens. The caption reads, "It strikes me that I love you." Whoa there. Now that I look at the dog again, I feel like he knows danger is coming and he's about to bark and go crazy. But then there's the hammer gnome. I mean, who would send this card? Uh-oh, it is the kitchen apparatus from your nightmares up next. We have this demon transformer. Some kind of half pan, half human. Let's just have a look at this straight off the bat, shall we? I'm feeling really uneasy. I mean, this is literally the scariest face I've ever seen in my life. It looks like a weirdly spherical killer clown. I do not like it. It reads, "My Valentine, I'm panhandling for your love." Maybe this was funny in the 1950s, but I feel like nobody says panhandling anymore. Also, once again, can we just look into those crazy red eyes? They're like rolling around everywhere and they're very, very wide. Never trust a wide eye. Also, like, mate, I'm not being funny, but what do you think you're doing with that spatula? All the better for panhandling you with? Put it away. Next up, happy Valentine's Day. Let me show you I love you by referencing incest. Oh, brother. What the literal frog's leg is going on here? Her face. What is that face about? I'm guessing from her dress and the microphone that maybe she's some kind of freak show act. And the card reads, "I don't want you to be my brother, I want you to be my Valentine." Like, who was saying anything about siblings? Honestly, I'm disturbed on so many levels, but then looking at her obviously deformed face, I'm now wondering if this card is actually suggesting that she is the child of incest, in which case this just got way darker. I would say, maybe as a general romance rule of thumb, leave incest off the table when it comes to selecting a Valentine's card. Masks! Next we have masks. Masks freak me out. Why would you need to wear a mask unless it was A, Halloween, or B, Halloween, or, you know, C, you're committing a horrible crime and you don't want to let someone know your identity. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid. Right. Now, I know that the card advises that you don't panic. It reads, "Don't be afraid, it's only me with your Valentine." But I mean, what are you up to, Carla? Why are you holding a mask with a disconcertingly long nose and whiskers? And what is that look on your face about? Ooh, are you about to scoop out my eyes with a spoon? Yes, I think you are. Why are you holding that card behind your back? Honestly, I feel like at this point, we need you to keep your hands where we can see them, love. Bang bang, you shot me down at number 3. Cupid's arrow is already a pretty intense notion, a lot of hunting imagery and conceptual wounding. Could we maybe draw the line at kids wielding guns though? No? We can't? Okay. Like, bro, I don't care if you have a cute rabbit or your overalls are on fleek. You pointing a gun at me literally makes you the last human I would want to date. Also, on the card, this gun wielder looks like they're about 3 years old, which adds more layers of absolute no. The card reads, "I am aiming straight at your heart, be my Valentine." Honestly, that sounds a lot like a threat. Well, this is awkward at number 2. We have, "I ain't kidding, I'd like to kidnap you." Like, seriously, jog on, you little pirate. Jog on. Could you, if you're sending me a Valentine card, if it isn't too much to ask, could you like maybe not joke about abducting me? Oh, you weren't joking? I'm probably gonna go with a no then. No, I won't be your Valentine. Also, do you mind staying right there? I just need to make a quick phone call. Finally, at number 1, we have the scariest and most poor taste Valentine's card I've ever clapped eyes on. We have some deathly murderous blackmail. Imagine this, let me paint this scene for you. A card is left on your doorstep on Valentine's morning. You open up that red envelope to see this. It's a sad skunk sitting on a dock with a gun to its head, a noose around its neck, and a rock tied to the end. Now the text says, "I'll be sunk if you won't be my Valentine," and I kind of think I get what they were trying to say here. Sunk, skunk, sunk, skunk, sunk, skunk. Either way, like, seriously? This is poor taste. And Hallmark made this card. What were they thinking? This is literally the worst. Imagine receiving this card. Like, I'm so glad I said yes to going out with you because you literally threatened to both blow your brains out and drown yourself. I don't know, maybe burn this card with fire and just buy me some flowers and let me exercise my own free will.
Starting us off at number 10 is the potential victim. This was shared by Reddit user Warden Jockey 2 days back, and they said a few years ago one of their friends matched with a guy on Hinge and started chatting for what ended up being months. The two had basically started dating via FaceTime, and eventually it was time for them to finally meet. He came to town one day, and despite being so excited, the girl got a bad vibe from him and just knew something was wrong and decided to cancel. That night, that same man murdered another girl and dumped her body into a nearby river. That could have been the user's friend had she not trusted her gut, you guys. I don't even know what to think about that. My stomach is in knots for this girl and how close she was to death, but also the girl that actually did end up getting killed. Honestly, I get it. I was just trying to figure out why a serial killer or like a murderer would be on these dating apps finding targets, but that is the easiest place to find targets, I think. So I mean, I get it, but it's not okay. Coming in at number 9 is the broken nose. This one comes from Redditor Grind Your Soul, who shared back in high school he matched with this girl on a Hinge and they went on a movie and dinner date. I have never been on a movie and dinner date. That's fine. It was going amazing, but when they were walking to the restaurant, the girl tripped over the curb and the user tried to catch her, but instead whacked her in the face with his head. Not the best knight in shining armor moment, but I mean, he tried. On top of that, the whack didn't just hurt her, it full on broke her nose, so the user started freaking out, trying to rearrange her nose back, which if anything made it worse and made it bleed more. Thankfully, the girl took it well, but when he dropped her home, he had to explain to her former Marine of a father why the hell his daughter's face is covered in blood. For sure, he probably got a gun out and was like, "You did what to my daughter?" At number 8, we have the creep. This one comes from Redditor Go Got It 1987, who said she had planned to meet this guy from Hinge that day at 12 p.m. They started speaking the morning of, but he started acting very bizarre. He had no idea where he wanted to go. When talking about hobbies, he apparently had none, and all he said was that he likes to smoke weed during his shifts at FedEx, which I mean, it's fine, you do you, but that's not really something you tell a Hinge match to try and impress her. He then said at work they were playing a game where they named people they didn't like, and he mentioned her name. And she was like, "I don't even get why he did that, considering we only texted for 2 days and I'm there with you, honey, I don't get it either." He then started complaining to her about he always got stood up and that he was anxious she would do the same, and the user just felt very creeped out, so she told him nicely that she wasn't interested anymore, and he started bombarding her with texts and eventually called her. On the phone, he started calling her every type of bitch on the list and told her to kill herself as well. This from the man who offered to pick her up for their date the same day. Imagine if she actually got into the car. God knows what would have happened. And why would you tell a potential date of yours that you don't like them? Just don't go on the date. I'm talking as the guy, not the girl, since apparently he didn't like her. Filling our number 7 slot is Overeager. This one was submitted by 26-year-old Hannah Sutka, who said she works as a hostess at a burger restaurant in Manhattan. She ended up matching with this above average cute guy on a Hinge who was not only witty, but also had a great job. Wow, what are the odds? Usually guys only have one of the 3, 2 if you're lucky. Either way, she told him the name of the place she worked because there were franchises all over the city, and he asked her out after work, but she declined. No one wants to show up to a first date smelling like burgers, I get it. She asked to reschedule, which he didn't reply to, but by the end of her shift, this girl looks up to see this guy walking into her restaurant saying, "I found you." She had no idea how he did, because he must have called every single franchise to see if she worked there before he narrowed it down. They chatted for a whole 2 minutes before Hannah signaled help to her manager and was duly saved. When she got home, she found out that he had unmatched her on the app, which I don't even get because he was the creepy stalker in this relationship, not even her. But he probably realized that and got embarrassed and was like, I'm gonna just unmatch this and pretend it never happened. Hannah? Don't know her. Now at number 6 is the catfish. This one was shared by Charlie Chaplin on Instagram, aka Charlotte, the lovely host of I.O. And she said that she matched with this really good looking CEO on Hinge and at first was like, wow, okay, how is this man single? They started talking, things then moved over to WhatsApp and it was going well. They were flirting, but the man kept trying to get her to send him nudes. And if a guy is trying to get pictures off you that early on, that is a huge red flag, or the flag that he just wants to get laid, I'm not really sure. Either way, he wasn't getting the hint and kept subtly asking for nudes, and Charlotte for some reason thought to recheck his Hinge profile. Now for some reason his pictures were now different. There were a lot of him in a black suit with an earpiece, so she straight up asked him if he was a bodyguard or something because it just wasn't making sense. He said he was a CEO, but she thinks he's a bodyguard. What's going on? She was like, is this a fake profile or something? To which he started freaking out and lashing out at her, saying she was a psycho fake. Wow. Coming in at number 5 is the accusation. This one comes from Bad Date Gal, and this date actually happened 2 months ago, so this is still a fresh wound. She explained that when she was curating her Hinge profile, she tried to make it genuinely reflective of her life. Some selfies, some pictures with friends and pets, some pics at formal events, and so forth. She wanted to paint an accurate picture of her and her life, and she thinks that she did that. So when she matched with this guy called Riley, things were going well. They were both into the same types of true crime shows and podcasts, and the conversation was flowing well, so she was like, when's the wedding? No, that's what I would have been like, but she was like, no, we should take this offline and meet. So after weeks of talking, they planned to meet at this cafe. When the day came, she wore a The Husband Did It shirt to show it was her. She wore some shorts and Converse, and honestly it sounded like a cute outfit. I'd probably wear that too, but maybe a different shirt though. Anyway, she didn't want to order anything before he got there, but he was late and she knew it. She kept checking her texts and Hinge, but nothing. After double checking everything, the agreed time, the location, etc., she just eventually left the cafe. The next day, Riley ended up texting her saying he should have explained why he didn't show up, but he thought it was self-explanatory. I'm sorry? How is it self-explanatory? Turns out he got to the cafe and felt like she didn't look like her photos and was so upset that she had catfished him so deceptively and then blocked her straight away. Even though she looked exactly like her photo, she spent the next 2 months looking in the mirror feeling like Ross Geller when she was in fact Russ, who's literally the same person more or less. Can you imagine being accused of being catfish when you're actually not? I'd hate myself. At number 4 is the long lost Romeo. So this one's short and sweet and comes from 23-year-old Amanda, who said she went on a girls trip to Miami for spring break and got Hinge as a way to figure out where they should go every night. Which is, I mean, understandable. It's spring break, everyone's barely wearing anything, gotta download Hinge to ask the boys where the best places are, I get it. Either way, one of her matches, Alex, was nice and helpful, but Amanda never actually met him in person. Fast forward a year, she randomly gets a call from Miami Alex, and he's asking if he can travel across the country to visit her, stay in her house, and meet her parents. Probably not, Alex. I love how this man had feelings for this girl for a year before saying anything. Like, this one's so cute, but also come on, let's have some social intelligence. You can't just go meet a girl's parents when you haven't even met the girl herself. Come on, Alex. Baby steps, right? Baby steps. Remember that. Filling our number 3 slot are children. This one comes from 31-year-old Lilith, who said she met a guy from Hinge for drinks and a date. He was hot, he was cool, but sadly he wasn't as hot or cool in person, but not a deal breaker for Lilith. If anything, he was socially awkward and there just was no chemistry there whatsoever. And bad chemistry wasn't even the worst part. After one drink, he abruptly blurted out, "Do you want kids?" To which Lilith was like, "Yeah, at some point, probably not with you, but yeah." She didn't say that, that was me. She was confused because who asks that on a first date, but then again he was older than her, so maybe it was very important to him, who knows. Either way, he then explains himself and says, "I'm asking before this goes any further because I shouldn't have kids. I have a history of violence and many of my family members are in jail and it doesn't feel responsible for me to procreate." He says that after one drink. Bruh. Red flag. ASAP. Let's end that right there. Now at number 2 is The Thief. This one's from Redditor Tony Outlaw, who shared after matching with a girl on Hinge, they went for dinner and a movie because of a bet that they had made. If she won, he would make her dinner and a pie, and if he won, they'd have to make out. That's the difference between girls and guys, you guys. Anyway, the girl ended up winning, and after dinner, the guy goes and puts a movie on at home, and the girl says she's hungry and goes to get some leftovers from the kitchen. 30 seconds later, the user's stomach starts rumbling as well, so he goes to the kitchen too and finds his date standing over his silverware drawer, emptying it into her purse. He's then like, "What the hell are you doing?" And she just giggles and says, "Oops." Pissed at her laughing, he walks over to her and sees that she only grabbed a few forks, so like a boss, he grabbed some of the pie and said, "Don't forget your dessert." He then dumped the pie into her bag and smashed it as much as possible so her bag would be ruined, and then duly kicked her out. Imagine your date is just out here stealing stuff from your house while you're in the other room preparing a movie. The nerve, the actual audacity of this girl. Shocking behavior. And people say Hinge is the good dating app. Clearly not. And finally, at number 1 is the L-bomb. We all know how serious the L-bomb is, you guys. Let's not play around. This one comes from 25-year-old Finn, who shared that this guy he matched with on Hinge came over to his house and they kinda just got straight down to it. But the guy was making intense eye contact with him the whole time, and when they got in the shower afterwards, the match confessed to Finn that he loved him and wanted to be boyfriends. After sleeping together once and talking on Hinge for 2 days, this man was in love with him. Finn was obviously dumbstruck and was like, "Oh, thank you, but I think we should get to know each other first." His match then refused to leave, and despite Finn claiming he had to be up early, the guy just said he'd sleep over and leave in the morning. Pushy much? Finn kept politely trying to get him to leave, but he kept saying, "But you love me, right?" It was so awkward and weird, and Finn actually shared he thinks he said he loved the boy just to get him to leave. Afterwards, the boy continuously texted and called him, but Finn never responded again. I mean, the guy still knows where he lives, so if persistent and really in love, I feel like he'd actually just show up and be like, "Finn, you're not answering my text messages, what happened to you?"
Coming into number 10, we have the Bumble Tumble. A lot of people are afraid of dating because they think that the guy or the girl will dislike them, and also dating can be expensive. Well, with that in mind, this poor girl's Bumble date was so awful it probably put her off dating for the rest of her life. So 28-year-old Ryan Miller had a date in Huntington Beach, California in September 2018, very recently. She met a guy and she thought that, you know what, she's just gonna have a drink, they're gonna get to know each other. She sipped on 1 beer and her date, a 38-year-old named Brandon, drank 3 beers and ordered a steak. Fine. She wasn't really enjoying the date though, and at one point Brandon even asked if he was behaving like an a-hole, to which she sheepishly agreed that he was. He was being rude to the server, he was just rude. I get it, you're hungry, but do you need to order a steak, or your date's just sipping on 1 drink? I don't know. Anyway, he got up to use the washroom and she pulled out her phone to text her friends. Soon though, she got a text from him that read, "Thanks for dinner, hard no, welcome to Cali, fatty." She replied saying, "Are you serious?" It turns out that actually he was. He'd left her with the check. What a real a-hole. Okay, we have some real horror from here on out. Coming in at number 9, we have 65,000 texts for her soulmate. Do you know, I'm not even sure if I believe in soulmates these days, and this stresses me out. You meet a guy or a gal on Tinder and the worst you expect is a bad date. The best, well, that's open to interpretation depending on what you're after, but hopefully another date or a series of good dates. You would hope that if the chemistry isn't felt, you can both just be respectful about that, but apparently not. In May 2018, Jacqueline Addis of Arizona was arrested for stalking and harassing a man she met online. The 31-year-old met the man on a dating website and soon started visiting his home and flooding his inbox with tens of thousands of texts. She claimed he was her soulmate.
I love him. L equals 3.3 times E equals MC squared, and that's the equation of eternal love.
When the messages started getting threatening, he called the police. One of the messages read, "Oh, what I would do with your blood, I want to bathe in it."
When you're finding love, not everything is perfect.
She was eventually arrested when she broke into his home and was found taking a bath in his tub. When questioned by police, she told them she was his wife. Another stalker after an online date. At number 8, we have a true Tinder terror. You meet a guy online and he stabs you 11 times, something he's been planning for a while. Oof. In 2017, a man was killed at the end of a 100-mile chase on Australia's east coast. Dr. Angela J had been seeing a 36-year-old Paul Lambert for 2 months, but after that time, she decided she didn't really want to further the relationship. There's a good way to take that involves respect for a human and their decision making, and well, there's the way Paul took that. Andrew had already started applying for a restraining order when Paul broke in and stabbed her 11 times. He then doused her in gasoline as she tried to escape. Now luckily, she did manage to flee and get neighbours to call for help. Police then tried to catch the fleeing maniac. Paul Lambert was shot dead after a lengthy car chase. Coming in at number 7, we have the fake singer. In 2011, David Russell from the UK pretended to be the frontman Oliver Skies from the band Bring Me the Horizon. He did this in order to lure 19-year-old Maricar Benedicto from California to Northampton. When she arrived, he took her to a forest that he said held special childhood memories, and he then slit her throat. The 20-year-old blindfolded the girl, having googled how to kill a person the day before. She jumped up after she felt the knife meet her neck, and then he stabbed her in the back several times before hitting her with a log. Miraculously, the girl did survive the ordeal and managed to escape. Now the whole situation was basically my mum's worst fear about online people come true. Clearly, people aren't always who they say they are, and the waters do get pretty murky online. Coming into number 6, we have the Tinder dissolver. Oh, this is so grim. This has some kind of Breaking Bad meets Bachelor horror story vibe, but sadly, it's the real life. 26-year-old Francia Ruth Ibarra and Emmanuel Delany Valdez began dating in October 2016 after meeting in Mexico City. These guys met on Tinder, and by Christmas, Francia was dead. The pair dated for a short while and they kept a low profile as a couple. On the 3rd of December 2016, Francia got ready for a date with her Tinder fling, not knowing it would be her last outing ever. Police found the woman's bones on Emmanuel's apartment balcony a couple of weeks after she went missing. The police were then led to believe that Emmanuel was behind the girl's murder, suspecting that he dissolved her body in hydrochloric acid. The news article I read about his arrest said that he was indifferent to his capture. Coming into number 5, we have the Seattle SICKO. It is heartbreaking the way some people have clearly abused the online dating culture to pose as someone legit and above board. I guess online dating cuts out initial first impressions. When you meet someone for the first time in real life, you can tell if they're a bit off. Anyway, poor Ingrid Lynn, a mum from Seattle, was trying to find a man to make her happy and take her out, when unfortunately she found John Robert Carlton, a man with a history of violence whose family had filed a restraining order against him in 2006. The pair met online and went on a handful of dates in early 2016. Sadly, after her ex-husband reported her missing, they found her head, arm, leg and foot in a homeowner's recycling bin. When officers arrested John, he had scratches all over his body. When he was being questioned, he said that he went to a ball game and got so drunk that when they returned to her home, he couldn't remember what happened. Officers think that he killed her in the bathtub and then chopped her up. What a gent. Coming into number 4, we have the Tinder death drop. What led to MAUREEN Wright taking a tumble off a balcony on the Gold Coast of New Zealand in 2014? Sadly, we don't know the answer to that question, but the events unfolded after a Tinder date went horribly wrong. MAUREEN and self-confessed ladies man Gable Toasty swiped each other on Tinder and decided to meet in real life. The date was going well. MAUREEN ended up going back to Gable's Gold Coast apartment where they drank whilst listening to music. The pair took a selfie together, although it does look like she's pretty intoxicated. It's unclear what happened between the moments of the selfie being taken and the moment the 26-year-old woman hit the ground beneath his 14th floor apartment, but it seems the pair got into some kind of argument. Gable made an audio recording on his phone asking MAUREEN to leave, threatening to throw her off his balcony. From what we can determine from the recording, the woman is distressed and hysterical. Gable seemed to threaten to lock her on his balcony, and it seems anyway that MAUREEN tried to climb down to her freedom, but instead fell to her death. Now what could have happened between them to lead to this happening? Gable was arrested for murder, but was cleared. The case was reopened in December 2016. Coming into number Number 3, we have the devil of dating. In July of 2018, Daniel Drayton of New Haven, Connecticut was arrested on suspicion of rape and murder. It seems that the man in his late 20s was using online dating as a way of selecting his victims. Daniel came to the attention of the NYPD when they were investigating the murder of 29-year-old Samantha Stewart in Queens, New York. Her body was discovered by her brother on July 17th of 2018. The man was also linked to a rape in Brooklyn weeks before. Later, Drayton was found holding a 28-year-old captive in Los Angeles following a date arranged online. It seems that the man had a history of violence and is now facing 23 years to life for his crimes. Coming into number 2, we have The Trap. Friends of Johnny Altinger were initially concerned about his blind date ahead of the Thanksgiving long weekend in 2008. Why? Well, the woman wouldn't give him a proper address to meet him at, instead instructing him to meet him at a back alley garage in a quiet part of Edmonton. Soon his friends were worried when he didn't show up for Thanksgiving plans. Soon they got an email, purportedly from Johnny, that read, "I've met an extraordinary woman named Jen who has offered to take me on a nice long tropical vacation. We'll be staying at her winter home in Costa Rica. Phone number to follow soon. See you guys around for the holidays. Johnny." His friends were suspicious as the email wasn't in his tone at all. Over the next week, his friends became even more concerned, so they broke into his home, where they found his passport was very much still there. This is when Johnny's boss got an email saying he was quitting. Enough was enough, and the police were called to investigate. It turns out that Johnny was lured by an amateur filmmaker who was not a woman at all, but a man named Mark Twitchell. Twitchell had written a script about a married man who uses the internet to meet a woman, but when he goes to meet her, he's attacked by a masked killer. Police believe that this is what happened to Johnny, and when his remains were discovered, unfortunately this was confirmed. Police also discovered that Twitchell had used the Plenty of Fish dating website to try and attack another man who luckily escaped with his life. Okay, this has been far too intense, so I just really want to end on something scary but funny, because sometimes the two do come together. This is one of the scariest online dating stories I've ever heard, but honestly, just one of my favourite stories ever. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the Tinder poo story. Okay, this would be terrifying if it happened to you. Luckily, all involved seem to have a good sense of humour. So I just want to paint the picture for you. Imagine this. You've got a date. You're excited. You end up meeting the person. You hit it off. You go back to their house and you talk even more, and, you know, whatever, like nature calls and you already have to face the fear of pooping in a new place, which, for me, anxiety. But you know what? You get over it. It's just going to be a blip in your evening. You got to do your business. You've done it. You're flushing. You're getting ready to go back out to your awesome date. At this point, the worst thing on your mind is that maybe they'll smell it and you aren't ready for that kind of intimacy. But oh no, it isn't flushing. You try again and again and again and again and again, and the maddening fear takes over, and you know you just can't leave it there for your date to see and smell, so you pluck it out of the toilet and wrap it in a tissue and you plan on throwing it away, only you realise there's no bin. Then you spot the window. Could you? Should you? What other choice do you really have right now when your poo is in your hand? You've already taken a really long time and you need to get rid of the poo, and you're now very, very, very much aware that it's, you know, still in your hand. You open the window and you throw it out, kind of disgusted with yourself, but what were you to do? At least it's over. You're washing your hands, you're breathing a sigh of uneasy relief, but then you look out of the window and oh, holy no, there is the poo caught between two panes of glass. What do? Panic, panic. Well, this was the real situation that Christine Lampard found herself in after a date with Liam Smith. She did, well, probably one of the bravest things in the history of bravery, and went to tell him what happened. She explained the whole thing, how it wouldn't flush, and how she threw her poo out the window. He went to investigate and, well, there was the poo stuck in a weird twilight zone of double glazing windows. Liam provided pictures to illustrate the story. It's a weird double glazing situation. The pair were gonna try and rescue the poo, agreeing that it couldn't just sit there. This was when Christine had the idea to climb out of the window and try and grab grab it, bring it back in, and maybe toss it in the bin in his garden. Unfortunately though, she got stuck. She got stuck face down out of a window, reaching for her own poo, and the fire brigade had to be called. They then came and rescued her, but they had to remove the window, which cost £300 to be replaced. Plus the awkward story of why she was hanging out of the window in the first place. Honestly, I can't tell you how glad I am that this wasn't me. I'd be terrified. This is the funniest / worst thing that could happen on a date ever, and hats off to the pair of them. I hope they get married and tell this story forever.